Welcome to the Metamorphosis Project Podcast. I'm your host, Tenya Eickenberg, and this is a space where transformation begins. Here, we dive deep into energy healing, self-care, and the power of mindset to help you break free from old patterns and design a life that feels aligned, vibrant, and authentically you. Each week, we explore the tools, techniques, and real-life experience that guide us toward lasting healing and growth. Because true metamorphosis isn't just about change. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. Now, let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back to the Metamorphosis Project Podcast. Today, we have Todd Payne. He is a life coach, a relationship coach. Is that correct?
That's right.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you here because part of my journey is that the relationship with my husband started out very different. We've been married for almost 29 years, together for 30, and we have got such a love story that people are like, there's no possible way that your relationship is real. Like, you have to have problems in your relationship. You have to have problems in your marriage. And the truth is that we've had bumps and stuff like that. But other than that, like, nothing really that jumps out that says that marriage was hard. So I think we're in anomaly. So
I think you are an anomaly.
I'm excited
Yes.
to have you on and just kind of like, what is the perspective of a relationship coach, how you see relationships, that kind of thing. But before we get into that, if that's where the conversation goes, I want to know your story. How did you had a transformation a couple of times throughout your
Couple
life?
of times. Yeah, that's right.
So take us back to the beginning of the first transformation, and then we'll go into the second and just go from there.
Sure. Well, first, let me just say thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And metamorphosis is just, it speaks to me because my life has been sort of a process of metamorphosis, and then period, and then metamorphosis, and then period, sort of constant. So for me, it goes back to college. I was not raised in any religious tradition. Very secular. Dunkin' Donuts was our Sunday morning tradition. But I fell in love with a girl who was a churchgoer in college, and she wanted to go to church. So I went with her to church and had what I could only describe as a religious experience. It was quite jarring. I really didn't know what to do with it. And in my pursuit to understand what had happened to me, I ended up in seminary. What I didn't know when I went to seminary was that it was really a vocational school for training priests.
Okay.
I thought it was going to be people sitting around reflecting on theology or something.
Like a theology degree.
It is a theology degree. That's right. I hold a
Okay.
degree in theology.
Okay.
And at the end of a 5-year program that included a year-long internship, the committee that oversees the ordination, who's eligible for ordination, so the crazies don't make it in, said to me, we don't think you're a good candidate for ordination. I have $50,000 in debt at this point. But what it really amounted to was that I had no people skills.
Okay.
My internship supervisor wrote at the top of my evaluation after a year, Todd has none of the essential gifts and skills for ministry. In fact, even my father, when I told him I wanted to go to seminary, he was like, you can't be a minister. You're terrible with people. So
that's horrible.
Gee, I wonder where I learned it. But through a crazy series of events, I did end up becoming ordained about 5 years after I left seminary. And then I entered what I just call a rock tumbler, because when you are in the ministry, when you're at the highest highs, weddings and baptisms, when you're at the lowest lows of tragedy and death, you have to learn to meet people where they're at, and you have to learn how to work with people, and you have to learn how to get people to work with each other. And so I spent about 15 years in the ministry just knocking about, and I did get better. But then I got a sabbatical. And on my sabbatical, my bishop said to me, this isn't a vacation. You need to do something for self-improvement. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know, sleep in. He said, I think you should study the Enneagram. And so he gave me a book and he put me in touch with an Enneagram coach. And all of a sudden, I was exposed to this ancient, mystical, beautiful system that gave a framework for everything I had learned about people, why they are the way they are, how to interact with them in ways that are meaningful. And I brought that back with me from my sabbatical, and I employed it with my staff, and then with my volunteers and my committees, and then with my parishioners. And after a few years, I realized that it was a way more powerful tool and I was doing way more good with it. So when I hit the 20-year mark of ministry, I said, you know what? That's a career. I've given my life, I've answered my call,
Right.
but it's time for me to go. I'm ready to have my nights and weekends back. And so I left to become a relationship coach. And so I use the Enneagram system of personality to help people have an understanding of themselves, their partners, improve their patterns, communication, and their relationships altogether.
Now, how does the Enneagram relate to, say, human design and the gene keys? Because it sounds similar, but
There
also
are,
different.
yeah, it is a little bit different. What I count as the distinguishing characteristic of the Enneagram is that unlike many other systems, some of the ones you've named, or some of the more clinical ones like Myers-Briggs,
Hmm.
is that the Enneagram is about the inner narrative, the story that we tell ourselves. Because all of us all day long are wandering around saying, things should be this way, I should be this kind of person,
Hmm.
this is what I need to get done. And, you know, we have this talk with ourselves about how the world is and how we are to respond to it. But it turns out there are about 9 different ways that people talk to themselves to get by, to survive, and to thrive. And each of them has tremendous strengths, but big blind spots and weaknesses
Yeah.
too. And the Enneagram really dives into that story that we tell ourselves. That's how we characterize which type of we are. So I think gene keys and human design are a little more rooted in where we are born and time
Hmm.
and our cosmic location, which makes
Okay.
a lot of sense in many ways. But this is really sort of the subjective experience of being you and how we can find those patterns in that. And through awareness and intentionality, augment the best of you. Because one of the things I love to say about the Enneagram is all characteristics, all personality traits are value neutral. They bring gifts, they make us who we are, they allow us to contribute, but at the
Hmm.
same time, they're the very same things that hold us back or make us be sort of myopic in the way we see the world.
Okay. So how does bringing the Enneagram into relationship coaching, how does that help couples or
Great question.
or parent child, or
Yeah.
because I'm sure that it can be used for any relationship.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
um
And that is the key question.
yeah, so how does bringing each person's Enneagram into the equation help them to see, because this is very, very cool to me, because I'm sure this would have helped with the way I look at my parents.
Probably certainly changed how I've seen mine.
Or the way that I see my children or my
Yep,
siblings, or even just, coworkers, like how to
absolutely.
work with coworkers. So how does bringing each person's Enneagram into a coaching session help to enhance or improve the relationship?
Great question. And there are two key points, two key things the Enneagram does for us. The first is when we have what I like to call a peek behind the curtain of how other people perceive the world and respond to it, why they do what they do, feel what they feel, say what they say. um, there's this beautiful moment. It's my favorite moment in all of my coaching, where empathy blooms.
Mm,
Because when we see the cage that our partner is trapped in, or the cage that our child is trapped in, our hearts begin to melt. We're like, oh, that's why you always respond the way you respond. That's why you always do the things you do. And it's no longer about me that you're doing something to me or to spite me. It's really about you.
yeah.
And that insight that allows a space for empathy to grow. The second way that the Enneagram is super, super helpful is that I like to talk about it in terms of music. I was a musician for a while. I taught guitar and bass while I was on the outs with the church. And when you are playing in the key of G major, there's a certain set of notes that you use. When you're
Hmm.
playing in B flat minor, different set of notes. So I talk about playing in the key of the different Enneagram types, which we use numbers, by the way. There's 1 through 9. So I will, when I'm talking to my wife, she happens to be type 2, I will speak in the key of 2. I
Okay.
know what she will hear, and what will land well and what will not land well. It's not manipulative in any way.
Right.
It's more about word choice and connecting with her perspective and her values. And she, in turn, has learned how I happen to be type 5. She learned to speak in the key of 5. And so it gives us a way of talking that we know our messages aren't being distorted and we're really hearing one another. So the empathy and the communication end up
Hmm.
being foundational tools for transforming a lot of relationships. And with my own children, I use it. They don't know the Enneagram as well as I do. They're starting to, but it doesn't really matter because I know my 14-year-old is a
Right.
7. And so when she comes at me in 7 like ways, I'm just like, okay, that's her. That's who she is. This is what matters.
Right.
This is what's going on with her. And I'm given pause and tools to talk to her.
And that's such a powerful thing for a spouse or a parent to have. Because I can, I know from a parent-child perspective that if I knew several years ago, like I know how to talk to my mom now, but if I
Hmm.
knew in my 30s how to talk to my mom, it probably would not have gotten to the point where it is now. There may
Yeah,
have been a time period where I would have been able to say, oh, wait a minute, this is because of her personality. And I did eventually learn that, but I think I learned it the hard way.
probably. And I like to say the best thing about banging your head against the wall is how good it feels when you stop.
Yes,
And my
yes.
objective as a coach is to kind of give people a little bit of a shortcut so they don't have to learn it the hard way over
Right.
decades, but give a quick peek and the tools right out of the gate to transform those relationships meaningfully, quickly, and sustainably.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge relief to some people.
Sure.
Has there ever been a point where they have learned what the other person's enneagram was, and they were still like, no, I can't, I just can't like play into their
Hmm.
personality, and
That's a
we're
great
like, you know
question.
what, I'm out.
Let me reframe it if I may.
Please.
When I first started teaching the Enneagram, I taught at lifelong learning centers to get my thoughts in order. So I was teaching to a lot of retired folks, and the last thing I expected to get from them was dating questions. And here I have these 70-year-olds and these 80-year-olds asking me, "Well, I'm a type 4. Who should I date? I'm a type 6. Who should I date?"
Oh,
Which I thought was so interesting. But what really through conversation, what I've honed in on is it's less about what type your partner is or your child is, and it's more about their level of health and their level of awareness.
okay.
Dating a healthy anyone
Yeah.
is better than dating an unhealthy one. So back to your question, yes, I have been the facilitator of intentional dissolution of relationships in the course of my work
Yeah.
with married people.
Yeah.
But it's not so much because I can't possibly understand why you see the world the way you see it. It's more because, well, if you're not willing to engage in the process, if you're not interested in becoming a better version of you, I'm not going to haul us both uphill.
Right.
And so we're going to
Right.
dissolve in
It-
that
It's
way.
it's matching their energy and
Yeah.
saying, I can't continue to match your energy.
Yeah. If you don't care that I'm
Right.
suffering, then I'm not going to continue to suffer. I'm going to move on and find a better way of being in the world.
Yeah. So what has um your favorite story? Your favorite
Hmm. Oh.
outcome?
Oh, my favorite outcome. Well, I do think of a couple who I will change the names to protect the innocent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll call them Bob and Susan. But when Bob and Susan came to me, they had a couple of issues, big issues between her and his parents, so in-law issues.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually had some real political issues between them, which was a bit of a surprise. And it was causing problems in their relationship. And through the coursework, one of the things I do, I think that's really different than traditional couples therapy or counseling, is I work with each individual as well as the couple. So I'll have a wife meeting, a husband meeting, a joint meeting, a wife meeting, a
Right.
husband meeting, a joint meeting.
Which I
And
think that's
that,
how couples therapy should be anyway.
well, maybe nobody asked me. What I've discovered, however, is that when each person is committed to self-improvement, relationship improvement is a natural
Yeah,
outflow.
absolutely.
And so when I worked with Bob and Susan, um, we were really able to dig into what was going on with each of them that the other person was triggering. Sure, as your spouse, I don't want to trigger you, but if you don't have a hold of yourself and the things that are triggering you, then it's incumbent upon me just not to do that. And we end up walking on eggshells. We end
Right.
up unsustainable commitments. So being able to work with both of them around these issues of in-laws and politics, we worked for about, I don't know, 6 months. And at the end of that, they had this channel for communicating with one another. So I could actually step out. It's an awful business model, but my objective is to give you the tools so you don't need me to be in the
Exactly.
room anymore.
Well, that's my business model too. I don't want clients. I don't want returning clients because
Right.
that reflects on us, right? If we continue to have clients that come back for the same problem, then there's clearly an issue with us
I
or
agree.
with how we're helping.
I
Um,
agree. Teach
yeah,
a man to fish, right?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we want to know, I think innately people want to know how to communicate. They want to know how to have healthy and productive conversations. They just don't know how. And sometimes they're resistant to changing how they communicate because of their belief systems or what they grew up with.
I think you're absolutely right. I think another important contributing factor is shorthand. When we've been in relationships for a length of time, especially when in that time we've had children or careers or where we have lives outside of our partnerships, we begin to be us against them. We're a team in the world. We get our bills paid, we get the kids fed, we get the things that need to be done. But in order to do so, we start talking in shorthand.
Yeah.
And human beings grow. 10 years of talking in shorthand, 15 years of talking in shorthand. I'm not the same person I was when this began. You're not the same person. So a lot of the work that I do is almost reintroducing, and I watch people fall in love again because they're like, oh, he is in there, that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
But we have to kind of get some of the crusties off and back to what's alive and vibrant.
Yeah, and as I was saying in the beginning, my husband and I have been together for so long, and we actually have just entered our empty nest stage.
Oh, wow, that's a
Our
big one.
son, our last child, moved out last Friday,
Oh,
and our
wow.
first grandchild was born on Saturday.
Big life transitions
I
for you.
know, I know, but I think what in you just saying, having to reintroduce ourselves to each other. And the more we talked about it, we're like, I don't know if much is going to change because we often reintroduce that was a focus of our marriage. It was I tell people I was in Mary Kay for a while and it was God first, family second, work third.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we got married, it was us first, kids second, everything else
Mm-hmm.
after that. And so we really focused on our relationship and making sure that we had date time and time every day, even if it was
Mm,
just 5 or 10 minutes to reflect on each other and just savoring those moments. And I think that's
mm.
the difference
Yeah, that
as to
is.
why our marriage is the way that it is and
That's
that it
part of
wasn't
the
hard, that
that's
it did.
part of the advice that I'm always giving folks is
Yeah.
make time for your partner and have dates. And you were very wise, and I'll add to that, strong or persistent perhaps,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
to
I
do
think
that.
I looked at my parents' marriage and said, I'm
I don't
not
want
doing
that.
that.
Yeah, a
My
lot of
parents
us
are
do
still
that too.
together, but It's
But a
not a
lot of people,
relationship.
in that same vein, a lot of people say, I'm not going to parent the way that my parents did.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so they do put children first
Yeah.
and spouse sometimes second. So, you know, it can be, it is sticky.
It is.
Human life is sticky, but I commend you for the way that you've done
It
it. And
is.
it's certainly the model that I invite people into is that uh, staying in touch. I say human beings are always growing. The
Hmm.
question is, are we going to grow together or are we going to grow apart? There's no
Right.
question about growing. It's
Yeah.
just about growing together or apart. And you've put the things in place to be sure that that growth has been, you've been in tandem as you've done
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And because I mean, one of the things is we always knew our kids were going to leave because that's why you have
Hmm.
kids, right? You have kids so you can raise them, grow them, they can fly the nest. Um, and so that's one thing that I think we always had in the back of our minds that one day our kids are going to leave and I'm going to have left is you. So let's make this work now so we don't have to work on it when everybody leaves and we can have fun.
I told my wife that I wanted to be done having kids at 32 so that when I turned 50, I could have my life back again.
Yeah.
And, it's sort of that eye to the long range. And we knew we were going to make it, and we just
Yeah.
kept that it before us. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I was 19 with my oldest. The
wow.
twins we had, I was 23. So I was done by 23. Um, and yeah,
You were
yeah,
a decade ahead of me.
yeah. Was not on purpose. It was the universe's plan, but
Right on.
wasn't even twins wasn't in the plan. I mean,
Twins. Whew.
yeah, our whole start in life was never typical. And
No.
maybe that's why our marriage is not quote unquote typical is because nothing about it was typical. We had other challenges we had to navigate
But
for
I'm
today.
hearing you describe to me something that I described really two key components. Awareness is the first one, and intentionality is the second. And I hear a lot of intentionality, even if the universe threw you curveballs
Yeah.
early. You
Yeah.
guys seemed like you approached it with some intentionality.
Yeah. And I think we still are. I don't think you can ever lose
No, it's an
setting
ongoing
having
game. Yeah,
having an intentional healthy relationship with anyone. I think you always have to set that intention even like as we navigate through um empty nesting with our children who they're not living at home now, so they're living their lives,
right,
and it's like we have to be aware that if they don't get back to us within a few days of us reaching out to them, it's not because they're ignoring us.
right.
It's because they're living their lives. They're doing what we trained them
Taught
to
them to
do.
do.
Taught
Yes,
them to do. Like
that's
go
right.
go live your life. We're lucky enough to still be included is how I look at it.
Uh-huh. And that's actually how I approach a lot of my interactions with mine are 14, 18 to 21 right now. And my wife is a much more relationship-minded person than I am. I like to say if you're going to learn relationships, it's like math. If you're failing math, don't go to the kid who aced the class without doing the homework. Go to the one who failed last year and is passing this year. I'm the one who failed and is passing. My wife, she aces relationships. She's just great with them. But she always reminds me when I'm reprimanding the kids or whatever, she's like, our objective is to still be in their lives in their 20s, not
Yes.
to solve the crisis right now that we're
Right.
facing in front of them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Good
Teach
work.
them teach them enough for them, give them enough to help them, but so that they can still figure it out themselves.
That's right. And
Yeah.
you really lifted up a point that is on the nose, which is there's no set it and forget it with
Right.
relationships. If
No.
you want the relationship, then it's a daily there's a little bit of effort. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it has to be a steady supply
Right.
of effort.
Yeah. And you both have to relationships go both ways. Now, I am
Hmm.
a strong believer that as a parent, we're always the parent. And so it's our job to kind of keep the doors open for that relationship with our kids. But it does go both ways. You give as much energy as you're receiving. So if you're giving for any relationship,
Mm.
you're reaching out to somebody to say, "Hey, how are you doing? Do you want to get lunch?"
Hmm.
And they take 2 weeks to respond back. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't do lunch. We'll talk soon. And then you're the one who reaches back out in a month or two going, hey, just checking in on you. How are you doing? And you don't hear back. And then you reach out again. It's like they're not matching the energy.
Right,
And so it's at
right.
that point you have to question, is this a relationship that is one-sided?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I find, at least for me in my 25 years of marriage, our marriage has been one-sided repeatedly, sometimes one-sided my way, sometimes
Yep.
one-sided
Yeah.
her way.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's when we're in those long-term relationships, there's a little bit more balance to be struck, a little more nuance
Right.
than a friend with a
Right.
lunch date. But there
Absolutely.
is still that ongoing. My wife and I like to say, the marriage is going well when both partners feel like they have the long end of the stick.
Yeah.
That's how you know things are good, because sometimes you feel like you're getting the short end, but when both people feel like they're getting the long end, then and that does take that checking in, that effort, that care.
Hmm.
It really asking is just saying, I care about you. And
Yeah.
that's really the message we want to be sending.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all relationships, the percentage, they're never 50-50.
No.
I think in all relationships, there might be 80-20 one day, but the next day they might be 80-20 the other way.
You hope for 50-50 sort of writ large, don't
Right.
you?
As the
But
average. Right.
yeah,
As the average.
trend. Right. But it's
Yeah.
never going to be any given moment. It's not going to be that way. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. This has been such an enlightening conversation. And I love that you have a tool that can show the other person that, oh, hey, this is how you can start to navigate your relationship with your spouse or your child or your friend.
Hmm.
This is, I love that because a lot of times we are sitting there going, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, walking around in the dark, it just means you get your shin on the coffee table is all
Yeah.
that means. And that's one of the gifts of the Enneagram is a concrete and practical set of steps and a direction that you can head in for your type.
Yeah.
And your partner's type is a different one. So when we're doing work, I'm not going to give you guys the same homework in the same way that I don't parent my two children or three children. They say, you never let me do. I'm like, you were a different kid than your
Yeah.
sister. So I'm going to parent you differently than I parent your sister.
Right.
And I think that, some relationship work is one size fits all. And the Enneagram is really bespoke. It's really custom to who you are, who your partner is, and what that dynamic creates.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you want to cover that we haven't covered that you want the listeners to know or understand?
Yeah, if there's a taste I'd love to leave in their mouths, it's hope. I think the most powerful human emotion is hope. And it's easy when we're caught in shorthand, when we're caught in patterns, when we're on the 20% side of the 80-20, to feel like I don't know what to do. This is how it's always been. It's always going to be this way. And to get despondent and to lose hope. And I want to say, listen, change is possible. Meaningful, sustainable change is possible. It really helps to have a guide. It really helps to have a system.
Hmm.
And then you've got these things in place that you can fold into your own life, apply in personal, practical ways. But I never want people to feel like there isn't hope, because
Yeah.
I've seen it change so many times for the better. And I want to offer people, something to hang their hat on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hope is some people poo-poo on hope, like false hope. But there really is no false hope. I don't think there ever is false hope. I think there's hope that may not work out the way that they want it to.
Mm.
And I think that's different.
I've done some neuroscience study, and one of the things I was enlightened when I learned was that we experience emotions one at a time. We might experience them sequentially, we might experience them quickly, but we don't truly experience multiple emotions at
Yeah.
once. And our emotions line up to be experienced by the brain, almost like outside a nightclub, and there's a bouncer sort of letting them in one at a time. Fear is such a strong emotion, it muscles its way to the front of the line all the time. And hope is the one thing that can muscle its way even in front of fear.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that can really
Yeah.
allow us to overcome whatever may be standing in our way. So
Absolutely.
it's essential.
Absolutely. Todd, thank you so much for coming on. I've loved this
Absolutely.
conversation.
It's been a
Um,
joy.
where can people find you to learn about what their Enneagram is and if they're interested in relationship coaching for themselves?
Absolutely. So my company is called Connect Fully. Connect fully with yourself, with your partner. And we live in a world where you can spell things however you want, right? So it's spelled with a K, KONNECTFULLY. And they can reach me at connectfully.com or shoot me an email, todd@connectfully.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. But Connect Fully is the thing to remember, and that's the place to find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I hope today's episode brought you inspiration, joy, and a spark of empowerment. Remember, transformation is an incredible journey, and every single step you take towards self-care and healing brings you closer to the life you truly desire. If this episode uplifted you, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us to share this journey of hope, resilience, and joy with many listeners. For more tips, support, and inspiration, come and visit us at designyourexistence.com. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and keep shining brightly. You are absolutely worth every bit of love and care you give to yourself. Take care, stay joyful, and be well.